Hey, what time is it? Hey, what time is it?
It's Podblast time. That's right. It's Podblast time. We are live, and we have a very special guest today I'm excited about, Mr. James Tim Walker, who is an animator, a professional animator for decades with many big studios you've heard of, like Hanna-Barbera, who produced The Flintstones, The Jetsons, and a whole bunch of your favorite cartoons throughout time, and also Warner Brothers. And he's a really, really great guy with an inspirational story. He's also, in addition to being a talented artist and animator, he's an author. And one of his books is behind me. It's his latest book, and it's called Shaken, Not Broken, An Artist's Journey Through Hell. And Mr. Walker from Hollywood, California, will be calling in to describe his personal hell. This is an inspirational story. This is not a sad story. It's one of hope, and it's filled with nostalgia. Hope you're having a great day today. I'll give you some background on Mr. Walker. I don't want to give away too much of what he's going to talk about today, but I will say this. He's a self-taught man. He was trained to be a professional animator. That's his passion. He'll tell you when he first could pick up a pen, he knew he wanted to be a professional artist. Not many people utilize their dreams, but Mr. Walker did. And he's going to talk about that during our interview. But when he accomplished his dreams, he had a setback, a major setback in terms of his health. Mr. James Tim Walker was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And what that did was it curtailed his ability to draw. He was born right-handed. And his doctor said, you'll never be able to use your right hand again for drawing. So what Mr. Walker did was he learned how to draw with his left hand. I want to read something in a print interview and a feature about Mr. Tim Walker that was in Healthy Living Magazine. Go to healthylivingmagazines.com to check out their magazine. This is called Hope for a Cure. As many as 1 million Americans and up to 10 million people worldwide are currently living with Parkinson's disease, according to the Parkinson's Disease Foundation. Experts say many thousands of cases go undetected, but every year in America, some 60,000 people are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. In 2007, James Tim Walker was one of them. For someone who's made a living with his hands, the news was devastating. He's a two-time Emmy Award winner, and Mr. Walker is a world-renowned animator and animation director, having worked with the Disney Studio, Hanna-Barbera Filmation, and Warner Brothers Animation, and more. Like Ralph Bakshi, one of my favorite animators who produced some controversial cartoons like Fritz the Cat, and we'll talk about that later. But he also worked on Scrooge McDuck, Tom and Jerry, Sylvester and Tweety, the Flintstones, Batman, Superman, and all of the DC superheroes. We are honored to have Mr. Tim Walker on today. And my original concept for today was to talk about animated feature films, because we did a show previously about cartoons, like theatrical cartoons, the short cartoons they used to play in movie houses before the features that MGM and Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, those cartoons, and cartoon shows, like television shows, like the Popeye theatrical and television shows, but we never really discussed features. Think Pocahontas, think Fantasia, think heavy metal. So I'm I may touch on that today. I don't know. But I want this to be about Mr. James Tim Walker and his journey. And this is going to be an inspirational, positive interview. And I have a lot of questions that I wrote, and I can't wait to ask him when he calls in about 10 minutes or so. Now, I want to explain to our regular audience members why I'm not at the fabulous Al Hardy Studios today. Well, presently, as I record this live show, there is a fuel crunch in the Southeast that is really affecting the Atlanta, Georgia area right now due to that pipeline situation that was in the news. So gas is not that plentiful on my side of town in the Marietta, Georgia area. So that's one reason I'm not there. Also, Al's had some issues with his internet provider with the signal going down in the middle of an interview. So I didn't want to risk that happening today while we have such a special guest. So that's the other reason. So we'll be back soon with Al Hardy and Tom, who's busy as heck working on all these great freelance jobs. That man works harder than anybody I know. And he's also an Emmy Award winner. Did you know that? Mr. Tom Williams has won Emmy Awards. I have a lot of respect for him for that. And he actually can do some cartooning work too, not professionally. Did you know that about Tom? He actually is a talented cartoonist, and he can do some caricatures. He's really good. But Tim's art, let me show you this book on camera. Tim's art is phenomenal. That's why he's a professional artist. Shaken, not broken. I'm going to invite Tim back so we can do this properly with all the bells and whistles of Al Hardy's studio or Tom's, where we can show on camera for YouTube some of his artwork instead of me just holding it primitively up to a camera. But Shaken Not Broken is available in stores everywhere, Amazon. You can even check it out at the library. But it's in wide release. It's a nice hardback book, and it showcases a lot of his artwork. I love these images he did. He drew some images of some artists at play. It's really cool. I love his style of art. It's really awesome. So I want to ask the audience, what are your favorite cartoon characters? I'm going to hold the calls for a little bit while Mr. Walker's on the line. Take your calls after the interview, or maybe during. You could ask Mr. Walker some questions. I can take 2 calls at the same time, so that's cool. But think about who your favorite cartoon characters are, and can you draw? Did you ever have a dream of being a professional artist or a cartoonist? Do you like the funnies in the Sunday paper? I'm a comic book lover. I've always collected Marvel comic books, and I drew for a while, not professionally, but I wanted to, but I gave up. See, Mr. Tim Walker, he never gave up. That's the beautiful aspect of his story. He never gave up against very drastic odds that curtailed his career temporarily, that he overcame. But I just liked Marvel comics, and I love cartoons. Tex Avery was my favorite animator in terms of like cartoons. He drew Droopy and some Tom and Jerry for MGM. He was my absolute favorite cartoonist, Tex Avery. You know, hello all you happy people. Hello all you happy people. You remember Droopy the dog, little hound dog. But another book that Tim wrote, I call him Tim. His real name is James Tim Walker. I call him Tim. He wrote Drawing from the Left, and that's a book that showcases his artwork and tells his story about how he overcame the odds of his medical condition, Parkinson's disease. And, you know, like the article said, a lot of people go undiagnosed. So I'm going to ask Tim later, what are the warning signs? And how can you treat Parkinson's disease? And what can we do to fight Parkinson's disease? Whether it's donating or just getting educated, getting tested. I don't know. I want to find out. So I'm going to talk about the very first animated film. Did you know that in 1917, in Argentina, the first animated feature ever made was released? And unfortunately, it's lost. It's called El Apostol, which means the apostle in English. And it was by Quirino Cristiani. And that's spelled Quirino Cristiana. And he lived from July 2nd, 1896 to August 2nd, 1984. Then, just to give you some history of animated features, meaning feature films throughout the world, in 1918, a movie called Without a Trace was also done by the same man, Quirino Cristiani. And he was born, by the way, in Santa Giulietta, Italy. And he died in Argentina on August 2nd, 1984, as I mentioned. And this was traditional cutout artwork in this. And gosh, I'm going to try to pronounce the native title, which means without a trace in English. It's Sin de Ja Rastros. And that was in 1918. Next, you had The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, released in February 1926 in Germany as Die Abenteuer de Prinz Ahmed. And that was silhouette artwork. Silhouette. You know what that is? You know what a silhouette is. Like, think of an hourglass figure of a female. That's a silhouette. But it's silhouette artwork, and this is the oldest surviving animated feature and the first German animated film, and it was directed by Lotte Reiniger. Lottereiniger. I'm probably mispronouncing these names, so forgive me if I do. Now, the next one, this is number 4 on my list in terms of the chronological order of animated features. You had Peludo City in English, and it's Peludopolis, Peludopolis, directed again by Quirino Cristiani in Argentina, and it's traditional cutout artwork. And it's another lost film and the first animated feature film that had sound, released September 18th, 1931. Now, in 1935, in the Soviet Union, the new Gulliver, like Gulliver's Travels, was released, which was the first animated film combined with live action. Live action, for those who don't know, it's just like a regular movie. It's motion pictures, human beings combined with artwork, like you've seen in Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1988, for example. So the Soviets got on board, and this was Alexander Patushko. And this first animated feature film made in the Soviet Union was released on March 25th, 1935 by Mosfilm, and it too is lost. Or is it? I think, you always hear about these things suddenly surfacing for millions and millions of dollars, and there's just too many of these lost first animated films for me to think that one of these can't somehow surface. I hope they do. I don't know, but it needs to come up. I mean, that would be really a lost find. So moving on here, and I will stop this history lesson when Mr. Walker calls in, but continuing on with my list, Tale of the Fox was released on April 10th, 1937 in France by Le Roman de Renard. Although completed in 1930, it remained unreleased for years due to problems with the original French soundtrack. It premiered in Berlin in 1937 with a German soundtrack and was later released with a new French soundtrack in April 1941. This was also the first French animated film. Now, finally, in the United States of America, we finally got our first animated feature film, but I don't know, it's kind of up to debate because it was a compilation of prior Disney short cartoons. But in terms of history, it's credited as the first animated feature film. So what this was, like I said, it was a compilation. It was a package film, the first animated feature film to be presented in Technicolor, titled Academy Award Review of Walt Disney Cartoons. And it was released May 19th, 1937. And by the way, Phantasmagorie is considered the oldest cartoon in the world, from 1908 by French cartoonist Émile Cohl, Cohl, Cohl. And it was hand-drawn animation. Bert Gillett, Wilfred Jackson, and Bert Gillett, Wilfred Jackson, and David Hand directed all those Disney cartoons that were in that compilation piece, Academy Award Review of Walt Disney Cartoons from 1937. And as most people know, Walt Disney lived from December 5th, 1901 until December 15th, 1966, and he was a true pioneer. Him and his brother started Walt Disney Studios, and you know what? I think Our guest and man of the hour is on the line. Mr. Walker, is that you?
It's me, Chance. It's me in form, ready to go.
Excellent, excellent. How are you today, sir?
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I'm honored to have you on our little show, the Nostalgic Podblast. I just am floored by all of your many accomplishments and how you overcame such odds. And I have some questions for you in the interview. How's the weather out there in Hollywood, California today? I'm sure it's sunny and beautiful.
The weather is a balmy 76, I think. It's very nice. I couldn't ask for better.
Awesome, awesome. I haven't been out there since 2007, which I know was a bittersweet year for you, which we'll get to later. But that was the last time I was in your neck of the woods. Did the touristy thing, went to Anaheim, to Disneyland, and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But
Been there many a time.
yes, sir, yes, sir. So I was talking about your book, Shaken Not Broken: An Artist's Journey Through Hell,
Now,
and
that's the second part.
yes, yeah. I mean that's your latest book, but
Yes, yes, yes.
of course, drawing from the left is your true first. How many books have you written? Let me ask you this.
Two. Just drawings from the left and Shaken Not Broken, Artist's Journey Through Hell.
Excellent, excellent. I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that you had a gift as an artist?
Okay, well, let me start at the beginning. What got me into all of this? I was very young, about 4 or 5 years old, and my brothers and I, were being babysat by my grandparents. We were over at their house, and I was the youngest of four boys, and we were running around terrorizing the house and everything. And I happened to run by the TV set, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and it caught my interest. And I stopped dead and looked at the TV set, and I thought, what is that? What is that? I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And what I saw was a cartoon. It was probably, I'm talking about 1953, 54, somewhere in that time period. And I probably saw an old Popeye black and white cartoon, or a Heckle and Jekyll, or a Mighty Mouse, or one of the ones that they would run all the time, those old cartoon packages. And I was hooked. I was hooked immediately. I want to do that. How do they do that? What is that? How do you do that? So I'd like to say I started drawing that day, but probably within a month, I started picking up paper and pencil and started drawing rather than using a coloring book and coloring. I started drawing. And I'm 72. I was probably 4 or 5 then. I'm 72 years old today. Not today, but today. And I haven't stopped. I lived my dream. I absolutely lived my dream. I went to grade school in the San Fernando Valley here, and these people moved into the house next door to us. And the guy was the head of publicity for Channel 7 for the entire West Coast. And he was socialized. We lived on a cul-de-sac. There must have been 35 baby boomers on that cul-de-sac, kids growing up. And so the parents were all socialized. And so this guy came over one day, and he's drinking at my parents' house with them. And he says, Tim, you're going to love this new show. It's being done by the same people that do Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear. And it's going to be on Channel 7 in the fall. It's going to be called The Flintstones. So I found out about The Flintstones about, 6 months before it's going to even hit the air. But what was even more important, he told me where Hanna-Barbera was located.
Ooh.
And it was right, I rode my bicycle to grade school. And so I looked at a map, and I calculated that if I just went down Lancashire to Hollywood Way West, turned left, and went up about 2 blocks, Hanna-Barbera was right there. So I could get there from my school on my bike. So one Saturday, I took the trip down to the school and then rode up to where Hanna-Barbera was. Went in the back behind Hanna-Barbera. There was a big dumpster. I opened it up, and there were cells and backgrounds all over the place. Tons of them.
Wait, would you describe what a cell is to the layman that might be listening?
A cell, for those who can remember, I'm sure you've seen like a plastic sheet of paper. It looks like it's a clear plastic sheet, and they draw the characters on them. They ink and paint the characters on the cell so you can see the background through the cell. They don't do it anymore. It's all done by computer now. Everything's computer generated now. But back in the day, everything had to be either hand inked or Xeroxed onto cells, and then paint the cells, and they'd photograph them, and you'd have your film. Well, Hanna-Barbera was doing so much production that they would lose money if they warehoused all that stuff because they were not in the business. There was no ancillary market to, if that's the right word, to sell the cells. There was no market to sell them in those days, the early '60s. So they would throw them out because they had the stuff on film already. So the main purpose is done, and they didn't want to pay storage, so they'd throw them out. Well, I became one of the first dumpster divers at Hanna-Barbera, I believe. So, and one Saturday I was in there, and I would literally get into it was one of those big dumpsters where the two lids that you lift up. I would get in the trash can and find the cells. And one Saturday I was there, and I hear this, "Get out of that trash can, you nuthead!" and I looked up, and it was Mr. Barbera, and he was working on a Saturday. I had no idea who he was. And so, and I probably stuck the cells back in the trash can, waited for him to leave, and then I came back and got them. But I'll tell you a little interesting side note. Hanna-Barbera was bought by Ted Turner, and then Ted Turner merged with Time Warner, so Hanna-Barbera became under the Warner Brothers. What am I thinking of? Umbrella. So they had Mr. B and Mr. Hanna and Mr. Barbera had like lifetime contracts, so they would stay there and work. And they didn't work, but they were there as figureheads. They gave a birthday party for Mr. Barbera. I think it was '92, and so they videotaped everybody who worked at the old studio to wish him a birthday greeting. So they filmed me, and I said, "Hey, Mr. B, it's great to be here on your birthday, and I celebrate your birthday. Congratulations. I bet you can't remember the first time we met." And then I tell the story about dumpster diving at 10 years old, or 8 years old, whatever I was at the time, and him telling me to get out of the trash can.
Did he remember the knothead?
Huh?
Did he remember the knothead, you?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he remembered me. But I think he got a little tear in his eye, and I think he felt that it was kind of nice to see that somebody had gone from that trash can to a major career in an industry that he loved.
Amen.
And I think it's one of the blessings that's been put on me all these years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So did you receive, I think you might have touched on this. I know the answer to this, but for those that don't know your story yet, did you receive any formal art training?
Yes, I went to Chenard Art Institute. Chenard is in downtown Los Angeles. Chenard was where most of the major Disney animators, the great animators from the 30s and 40s, all went. And it became Cal Arts. I'm sure you're familiar with the name Cal Arts. I graduated from the first graduation class at Cal Arts in 1970. But it was at Chenard for 2 years before that, then Cal Arts. And believe me, I was the typical, hippy-dippy, screwed around, wasted time, did projects. I'm not proud of some of my behavior back then, but anyway, I did learn.
Reminds me of George Carlin, the hippy-dippy weatherman. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was great. Art school was great.
Cool. And that was California Institute of the Arts, right? Isn't that the institute?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, it's Cal Arts, and so out in Valencia, and I graduated from the first graduation class. Yes.
Now, when you started, okay, what was your? Can you describe your first professional cartooning or artist gig?
Absolutely. I was 16 years old. Some of you may remember this show. I worked on the main titles to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
This blows me away.
David Hemmings.
David Hedison.
Hedison, that's it. If you remember the opening titles, there was a radar screen where this white line animated around, and it would wipe the scene with, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, starring Richard Basehart, yada yada, created by Irving Allen. I worked on that white line. What that was there was a white dot in the middle of the cell, and the white line was the radar thing sweeping the screen. You had to make sure that white line was inside that little white dot at the center of the field, or else there'd be a little light flicker on the screen, and they didn't want to see that. So I had to lay all those white things down based on what the animator told me, and make sure it didn't flicker. It It was the first thing I got paid for. So in my mind, my first professional gig. So I started in July of 1964, and I retired in, I believe, August of 2014.
Wow.
50 years. 50 years living my dream.
May I ask you a question? I mean, you don't need to answer this.
Yes,
Do you get a
anything you
pension?
want.
Did you get a pension?
Yes, oh yes.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yes, I got a pension. And the pension in Motion Picture Fund is based on how many hours you work. It's not based on if you get 20 years or 30 years and you stop at that. Every hour you work, you get paid for. I think I retired with 144,000 some odd hours, which is astronomical. Because most people, if you work 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, you're going to get X amount of 60,000 hours, 70,000 hours. To have 1,444, no, 144,000, whatever hours I was unbelievable. I had to call a pension office one time to find out what hours were reported for me one day, and they said, "Okay, fine, we'll hook you up with the pension hours." And this very matronly grandmother type woman answered the phone, very nice. And she said, "Okay, Mr. Walker, what's your Social Security?" And I gave it to her, and there's this long, pregnant pause. And then I hear this, "Oh my God, what did you do? Sleep in your office?" The average person gets 2,000 hours put in their pension if you work a year long. I had many years where I had 7,000 to 8,000 hours. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it because I loved every minute of it. I loved every minute I was working on cartoons. So I was blessed. I was so blessed.
That's incredible. So I'm sure you're a little bit of a natural, though. I mean, because your artwork is incredible. I mean, I know you could go to like the Joe Kubert School of Art and where you studied at the California Institute of the Arts, but you must be a natural talent.
I don't know. I have worked with so many great artists. I mean, unbelievable guys that just can do anything. I feel I've gotten better over the years, but I always loved what I did. I loved what I did. I was the best director in this town, TV director, and the fastest. My phone would ring off the hook for people who wanted me to work for them all the time. And I couldn't work full time for them. They begged me to work part time for them. And I don't say that out of pride and ego. I say that out of the love I had for the industry, and I was lucky to be able to do that. So when animation left here, and I remember when I animated at Hanna-Barbera on the studios, and then animation went overseas, so I had to learn to do either direction, sheet timing they call it, exposure sheet timing, or I had to learn to do storyboards. And I looked at storyboards and I thought, oh my God, this is a lot of work. That's a lot of work, a lot of drawing. And I looked at timing sheets and animation direction. And I said, well, I'm going to learn to do that. And I was lucky. I had one of the great Tom and Jerry animators from the 40s teach me. His name was Ray Patterson. He animated on Fantasia. He animated at Disney's on Pinocchio. And a great animator and a great guy. And he taught me how to slug boards and write sheets, which is a technical thing. I can explain it later if you want to hear about it. He taught me how to do it. And so I just look at it as I'm animating, but I don't have to do the drawings. If a storyboard artist gives me a good storyboard with lots of poses, I'm telling the animators overseas how fast or how slow to go into those poses based on what I write on the exposure sheet. So, probably there's a little bit of natural, but there's probably, I was just lucky. Let's face it, I was just lucky.
Well, how many coworkers did you have, say, at Hanna-Barbera Studios?
Oh,
Could you describe like an average work day? I mean, how many people were you working with? What was the environment like?
Well, being an animator at Hanna-Barbera, you'd have to do 100 feet a week for a week's pay. Now, 100 feet of film is what I'm talking about.
What does that
So,
translate to? 100 feet of film. What does that mean?
90 feet is 90 feet a second. So that's a couple of seconds of it's a second of I've forgotten all this stuff. I haven't done it in so long. It's 90 feet a second, 24 frames a foot, 90 feet a second. Well, an animator would have to do 100 feet, and that can be a lot of work, or it can be real easy. Now, if you had close-up shots of characters like Huckleberry Hound, Yogi Bear, where just the head goes up and down and he goes, "Hey, Yogi, let's get out of here. We got to go." And that's it. Or you could have something like a cattle stampede or something where it would take you forever to do one drawing. So anyway, you had to do 100 feet a week. And if you did over 100 feet a week, you would get bonus money. They would pay you bonus money. Well, I was one of of several young guys that came into Animator in the early and mid 70s. And I always had bonus footage, always. And they didn't care if you did your work uh, from Saturday midnight till Sunday morning, and you got it all done in that time period, and you just played at the studio all week long. As long as you gave them that 100 feet or more, they left you alone. So I would deal, as an animator, I would get that 100 feet, and I would animate that 100 feet, and I'd give it to an assistant to do the assistant work. And that's all I dealt with. By the time this show got to us in animation, the story had already been written, obviously. The storyboards had all been done. The layouts, which are the layout artist takes the storyboard and gives you a background the size of the paper you're working on, and the characters in the positions that they're doing, whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, the size relationships and stuff. And then you take those couple of layouts, and then you do the animation, do the actual movement. So I worked with friends who were working on the same show, but there had to be, holy cow, there had to be a couple hundred people in that studio at least, I think, with the checkers and ink and painters and everybody involved. I mean, it's a factory line situation, but it's a very creative factory line situation. So I hope this is answering your question. I'm kind of going in many different directions.
Well, yeah, because in radio, there's a lot of backstabbing. It sounds like everyone got along and we're happy to be there. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I think so. I think for the most part, yes. There's always going to be the guys what I found, when I was an assistant animator, I worked for a lot of great old animators that were still alive and still animating. I'm talking about the guys that did Tom and Jerry, like Irv Spence and Ray Patterson, and Mr. Hanna and Barbera, back in the 40s and 50s. Guys that worked on Fantasia and Snow White, Pinocchio, and all the Disney silly symphonies and stuff. Those guys were the super talents. They were so good, it was unbelievable. And most of those guys, if you had a problem doing a drawing or something, you could go to any one of those guys and they would help you and show you how to do it. And they were the nicest guys in the world. It's the guys that were like the real hacks that were assistants for a long time and then became animators, but they never animated anything really fantastic. They always did like the limited animation, but some of them would just, love to lord it over you and just, why should I make that drawing for you? You go make it yourself. I had to learn how to. Anyway, but there weren't too many guys like that. I would say mostly it was fun. I mean, it's cartoons, for goodness sakes. What more do you want? Gosh,
Right
you
on.
want to pay me to do this?
So, what was your progression? Did you start with drawing the background? Is it like acting where you move up, you start at the background maybe, and then you become a principal player? Like, did you start?
No. What you do is, when you start in the industry, if you want to be a storyboard artist, you'd start in the storyboard department. If you want to be a background artist, you go to the background department. Layout artist, you go to layout. Animation, you go to animation. Now, for animation, the entry-level job is an in-betweener. And an in-betweener is a guy that fills in all the in-between drawings, the drawings between the major extremes. An animator will draw the major extremes. Let's say Fred Flintstone's standing in front of a chair and he sits down. So a layout artist will probably draw the chair, and he draw one pose of Fred standing, and then one pose of Fred sitting in the chair. Okay, and he take that off the storyboard, and then the animation director, who's also an animation sheet timer, the exposure sheets are like ledger sheets. They're very much like notebook paper, but very long. Every little square box on that exposure sheet represents one frame of film. So you have to direct everything that moves. You have to direct it on that sheet. You have to know what it's doing, where it's going, and how much time it takes to get there. Is it like a Fred Flintstone? What I would do, if Fred was standing in front of the table, that'd be drawing number 1. Then he might anticipate down slightly, and that would be drawing maybe number 5, and I'd put 3 in-betweens in between it. And then maybe he might jump up in the air, going backwards a little bit, and drop down into the chair, squash a little bit when he hits the chair, and then come up and settle. And that would be like full animation if you're doing it that way. And Hanna-Barbera, limited animation, you might just plop down in a chair in 3 drawings and you could do it. But it's all based on timing. You have to analyze these characters. Is this a slow, walking, lumbering elephant that takes a long time to take a step? Every 24 frames, he might be a step. Or is it the roadrunner that's zipping all around the place like crazy and really quickly? And is it in 2 frames, 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames? You have to figure out what these characters are, who these characters are, and what's motivating them to make these movements. So there's the thought process involved, but like any profession, once you get into it, so you go from an in-betweener to an assistant animator. Now, an assistant animator will take the animator's rough drawings. The animator usually works very rough because he's thinking in terms of the action. He's not thinking in terms of a good drawing, good clean drawing of Fred Flintstone or something. He's thinking of the action of Fred sitting down in that chair. How am I going to do this? Do I want him to just was Fred sad and morose and he's just going to plop down in the chair and stick his head into his hands? Or is he happy and excited he got a raise? And does he jump up in the air, kick his heels together, land in the thing, and wind up in a real proud pose or something? You have to think of all that stuff. And then you do your scene accordingly. So the animator will rough out the major poses. They call them the extreme poses. And once he's roughed out the extreme poses and he has what he wants, he'll put a chart down on the drawing. A chart is on the side of the drawing. It looks like a railroad, kind of. It looks like a railroad. And he'll tell you where to put the drawings in between those 2 extremes, the extreme of him standing and the extreme of him sitting. And so the assistant does that. And then it goes to the in-betweener, and the in-betweener fills in the in-between drawings. So there's a whole chain of command. But and hopefully, an assistant. A lot of assistants don't want to become animators, and sometimes when somebody draws so well, they're stuck as an assistant because they're more valuable as an assistant than they are as an animator because they've got enough animators, but they don't have enough people around who can really draw the stuff beautifully and put it on model, as they say, so it looks exactly like what it's supposed to look like.
It sounds like they have job security, but does the artist? It all depends on what your passion is, I suppose. Are they happy being stuck in that role, or do they want job security?
I think some of them are, but I think some of them are not. I think some of them get very leery of the business and get dejected and lose sight of what they want to do because they feel it's an uphill battle and they're never going to get there. And indeed, that did happen to a lot of people.
Now you've touched on this, Mr. Walker, the projects you've worked on, but could you just list some of the more notable projects that our retro-loving audience members may have heard of? Obviously, the Flintstones. Oh, and did you ever draw the Teen Flintstones? I loved seeing the teenage Bam Bam and Pebbles. Did you work on that?
Yeah, the Bam Bam and Pebbles comedy hour or something.
Yes, that's it.
I worked on opening credits titles where they're playing like the xylophone. The hippo has a xylophone teeth or something, and I can't remember it all. But yeah, I worked on the Pebbles and Bam when they were teenagers. Yes.
That's cool. And how about Josie and the Pussycats?
Josie and those Hot Pussycats. Yep, I worked on them. I worked on Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. These are some of my more superlative shows. I would say probably one of my favorite shows, 2 of my favorite shows that I worked on that I'm very proud of. 3 of them. Batman the Animated Adventure.
Yes.
Samurai Jack. And Tailspin from Disney's. Those are 3 shows that I'm very proud to have worked on. I thought they were just unbelievable shows that were beautifully done, beautifully put together. I'll tell you an interesting story about Batman Beyond. Or not Batman, but Batman the Animated Adventure. I was working at Disney's on DuckTales, and I had a friend that I was working there with me who I had worked with at Hanna-Barbera, and she left to go to Warner Brothers. And she was vice president in charge of production at Warner Brothers when they opened up a new cartoon division. I think it was 1989. And one of the first things that they were going to do was Batman the Animated Series. So I was working at Disney's. I was under contract to Disney's. I had a year and a half left on a contract. And what that meant was if there was extra work to do, and Disney's had a lot of freelance work, that I had to give Disney's first choice of doing freelance for them as opposed to picking up freelance from any other studio. And see, if you work an 8-hour day at Disney's, they can't tell you what to do between 6 at night and 5 in the morning. So you can work freelance wherever you want it. So anyway, my friend calls me from Warner Brothers and she says, "Tim, I haven't seen you in so long. Let's have lunch. Come on up to the studio. Let's have lunch." Well, the studio was out in the valley, San Fernando Valley, and next to this mall, the San Fernando Mall at Sepulveda and Ventura. So I go out there and I meet her for lunch. Now, this is back in the days when I would say I like to imbibe in maybe a couple of adult beverages at lunchtime, which I don't do anymore. Her main goal was to pour 3 of those things down me as quick as she could, give me one bite of lunch, and hustle me over to the studio as quick as possible because she wanted me out there for another reason. So I get out there and I'm half in the bag, and she says to me, "Now I want to show you this new show we're doing. It's called Batman the Animated Series." Ooh. And she takes me to show me this stuff. I don't know if you know these stuff, but Eric Godomsky and Bruce Timm, two huge players in the industry, great artists. I mean, great artists. She shows me all this presentation artwork that's up all over the walls in this big conference room, and they just sold the show and all that. And it's just beautiful. Read the Max Fleischer's old Superman cartoons.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they stole from everybody, but they got the straight one.
From the 40s. Those are theatrical cartoons for those that don't know. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. So we're looking at all this stuff. Now, she says to me, "Now, when could you slug a board?" Now, slugging a board means when they write the script and they do the storyboard. Once they do the storyboard, it goes to an animation director. Now, when you have scenes of characters saying dialogue, you know how long those scenes are going to be because it's all predicated on how long that line of dialogue is. But if you have scenes of action, let's say Batman and Robin are talking, and they say, "Well, we got to get in the Batmobile and we got to get out of here. We got to get to downtown Gotham, whatever." So let's say
to the Batmobile, let's go.
Yeah, to the Batmobile. So let's say you cut away from the close-ups of them talking. They run into the scene, jump into the Batmobile, and zoom off camera. Well, I have to time out how long that scene is going to take. How long is it going to take them to run across the thing, jump into the Batmobile, fire it up, and take off? So every scene that doesn't have footage in it, dialogue in it, you have to put in the footage that you think will make that scene work. So that's called slugging the board. So when you do a show, you know how long the dialogue is for a show because they can tell you this line of dialogue. Every line of dialogue has a number and the footage length. Not like this thing. "Hey, Robin, we got to go." Let's say that's 1 foot 12 frames. Okay, so they put 1 foot 12 frames next to that line. So they add up all of the lines of dialogue, and that tells you you've got 1,375 feet of dialogue. That means you have to slug in about 600 and some odd feet because the shows are roughly 2,000 feet. A half-hour show is roughly 2,000 feet with titles and end credits and the show. So you have to slug the board, slug all the scenes that have no dialogue so you can know how long they're going to last. And then, so that's how you do it. And then you total it up, and if you're over, you have to make cuts. You take it back to the director and make cuts. Or if you're under, you need to pad somewhere, or you need to do an insert if it's a lot under. So anyway, that's how that stuff goes. So anyway, she says to me, "When can you slug the board?" And I'm, like I said, half in the bag, looking around, going, "Well, I guess now." That phone call that she called me 27 years later, I was still at Warner Brothers.
Awesome.
27 years of employment. How blessed is that?
Living your dream.
Most people can't get 27 minutes of employment in the film industry, and I get 27 years. Holy cow. Unbelievable.
Mr. Walker, we have a lot of fake...
Wait a minute. Let's drop the Mr. Call Me Tim, please.
Okay, Tim. We have a lot of people watching on Facebook Live, and they're commenting, and let's see. Someone's mentioning Wesley Millsap, Captain Caveman and Son, a short from the animated series. The Flintstone Kids was a favorite of his. And Kim Ponder says, "You are dedicated to success." And let's see. Oh, while I'm looking at these comments, there's some more I need to scroll up and look at, but I want to know, like, did you ever create any characters? Did you ever go to the suits, as we call them, or executives at the various studios and present ideas? And were they
Yes.
receptive to your ideas, or did you meet
Yeah.
or were you met with resistance?
Well, I'll tell you one. I only did that once. I created a group of characters called the Pollywoggles, and they were very much like in the vein of the Smurfs, which I worked on, but they were different. I mean, they didn't look like the Smurf songs, but they were very much three-dimensional, kind of round, cartoony, great for kids, and you know, I created them all. I wrote the bio on them, and I showed them to Jane Barbera, and she loved it, and she took it to her father. I got to explain something. Joe Barbera was in charge of creating shows, selling shows, doing the selling, going to New York, getting sponsors and that kind of stuff. Mr. Hanna was involved in running the studio. Joe would bring the show back that was sold, and Mr. Hanna would get it through the studio and get it done, do the physical work. So Jane took this thing in and showed it to her father, and he was like, his attitude was, well, it's beautifully done. I really like it. I'm glad we have somebody in the studio that's this caliber work. But they were just doing the Smurfs and the Trollkins and something else, and they thought, man, I got enough of this stuff. And they wanted to buy it from me, is what they wanted. And of course, that defeats all purposes. So I didn't sell it to them, and it's still sitting in a drawer to this day. And but I never had the ego to have to. I never really cared about being that in charge like that. I mean, it'd be nice to sell something, sure, and get all kinds of merchandising and that kind of stuff. But I was just happy doing what I was doing, drawing and animating, and just having a great time. So I never had the ego to be in charge.
Kim Ponder says, I love the dumpster diving stories from when
Oh,
you were a
yeah.
kid getting those great Hanna-Barbera animated cells they were just discarding. And for, for you to be yelled at and called a knothead, it's like, dude, you're throwing this stuff out. I'm going to pick
Yeah.
this up, man. Give me a break.
As we speak, I'm looking on my wall, and if you remember the end credits to the Flintstones, the very first year, they were sponsored by Winston cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
And I have the original cell and the original background of Fred holding up a Winston cigarette, looking back at the camera. His TV's in there, and his chair, and his ashtray, and all that. And it's probably one of the last cell setups I have from that time period. Most of the cells are all gone. But everybody says to me, God, are you a millionaire? You had all these cells? I had cells from Huckhound, Yogi Bear, Quick Draw McGraw, Johnny Quest, Flintstones, Top Cat, Jetsons, all that stuff.
Had.
And they go, yeah, and they say, God, are you rich? You should be rich. No, I'm not rich. I gave a lot away. I threw a lot away because they get stuck to each other. My parents would clean my room and throw them out. But I look at it this way. I got them when I was a young, impressionable kid. They gave me $1 million career, bar none. Bar none. When I pulled those first cells out of the trash can, I went berserk, absolutely berserk. And it also, here's a little aside to this story. I was going to grade school right around the corner, and I took some cells into school one day, and I had them in my desk. And a new kid came to school from New York, and he came into the 6th grade or 7th grade, and I met him, and I showed him these cells, and he goes, "Where'd you get that stuff? Wow, I can have some of that." So I took him down to Hanna-Barbera, and we're best friends to this day. We've gone to art school together. We've worked together. We've played together. We're best friends, and I have a wonderful relationship with this friend of mine, Robert Alvarez, that is all because of this, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Excellent. Well, Tim, so could you keep your artwork, or did it become property of the studios you worked for? Did you?
Well, it becomes property of the studio, but a lot of the times they throw it out too because, like I said, they had so much production going on that you just couldn't keep track of everything, and you'd have to pay a huge storage bill to store that stuff, and they were not in the market of doing that, and they only recently got in the market of selling cells and limited editions and all that stuff. When that stuff became very popular 20 years ago, they did it. But but I could get some of my scenes once in a while. I've got a couple of scenes here from some of the studios someplace. but not much.
Very cool. Now, Tim, which projects would you like to work on, past or present, if the opportunity presented itself? Is there anything you always wanted to work on and didn't, or and what are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. Well, I loved working on Magoo. I worked on a lousy version of Magoo, one of the last versions of Magoo. Mr. Magoo, where are you, or something like that. But I
Oh,
loved the cantankerous Mr. Magoo from the 50s.
Fred Backus voiced him, Mr.
Yeah,
Howell, on Gilligan's Island, and he was in, of course, Rebel Without a Cause. The
yeah,
great Jim Backus.
yeah. He was great too. He was great. And I worked with a lot of the guys that animated that stuff back in the day. I love that. Um, what am I most proud of? Gosh, that's a tough one. I have to think about that one. Um, I, you know, I just I got a kick out of almost everything I worked on. I could if it wasn't full animation, um, I could always find like a drawing, a single drawing that I did during the day, or something that I could really get off on that I really enjoyed drawing, that I could noodle and make it a really great drawing or whatever, or get some satisfaction out of it. And the rest of the day was fine because I got some satisfaction out of the one or two drawings that I really liked. No, are you asking me what I'd like to work on Fantasia and Snow White and that stuff?
Anything. It could be from the
Yeah.
past or the
Oh
present.
yeah, sure. I would love to. But I can imagine if you think of a Disney studio. 1928 they do Steamboat Willie. 1939 they do Fantasia.
Mm-hmm.
In 10 years they go from the black and white Mickey Mouse to
Mm-hmm.
this unbelievable piece of artwork, Fantasia.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been a really great place to work because everybody's breaking new ground. Everybody's advancing. Everybody's finding, they're coming up with new things and new creative things. Everybody's learning. Everybody's moving forward. It must have been unbelievable to be in that situation. And of course, I loved MGM in the 40s, Tom and Jerry. I worked, like I said before, with Ray Patterson and the great Herb Spence, who was a natural, a genius. He was a genius. And another great animator who worked with Tex Avery named Ed Love.
My favorite, Tex Avery.
Yeah, Tex Avery. Well, I knew Tex Avery. He was a great guy.
Wow.
And Ed Love was an animator who left Disney's, went over to MGM, and Ed Love was a great animator. He didn't draw all that well, but he became a good artist because he animated since 1929. And but you needed a top flight assistant to follow him up because his drawings were so rough. But boy, he could animate like nobody's business. And Bill Hanna said he was the best animator he ever had in the building. So, all that stuff, and of course I knew Bob Clampett. Bob Clampett, who did the great Warner Brothers stuff. Great, they were all wonderful people. Just I'm so blessed to had the chance to get to know them. I used to drive from Hanna-Barbera to my home in Redondo Beach at the time, down through Hollywood, and I would take all these side streets. And every once in a while, I'd stop at Bob Clampett's office. He would be in there doing some packaging or doing something. He was always there for around or something. And he would always, it was so funny. I'd come in and sit down, and he always wanted to know what's new with me. What am I doing? We talk about the old cartoons and stuff, but he wanted to know what are you doing? Let's see. Oh, that's great. And he would always have a brown bag lunch, and he would take out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a tuna fish sandwich or a bologna sandwich, and he would tear it in half, and he would give me half, and give me a bag of chips, and give us a couple of quarters, and go out and get us a couple of sodas out of that machine out there. And I'd have lunch with the guy. And he was just a regular guy, you know. It was just, I look back on those memories today, and I was so blessed to have been able to do that.
Amen.
I'm just so grateful for that.
Now,
So grateful.
you've won Emmy Awards. You've been recognized by the National Academy for the Television Arts and Sciences a couple of times. And by the way, for those in the audience that don't know, the first Emmy Award was awarded in January 25th, 1949. But you've won two of them. Now, can you describe how you felt when you were nominated and when you actually won, and what did you win those Emmys for?
Well, there's another story here that you got to hear first.
Okay.
For the longest time, I felt like the Erica Kane.
Susan Lucci.
Yeah, exactly. I've been nominated, I don't know, 20, 30 times. Never won. Never won. So my friend Robert Alvarez, who I mentioned before, my best friend, we would go to the Emmys all the time. We'd run a limo and all that nonsense or whatever. So we get nominated for Samurai Jack, a great show. Genndy Tartakovsky, I can never pronounce his last name right, but he's a wonderful artist and a great, great guy, a huge talent. So Robert and I get nominated for this, and I tell Robert, I don't want to go. I'm tired of going. It never happens, so I'm not going to go. Well, don't you know that's the time we won, naturally. I'm not even there. So um, I don't know what it was like to go up on stage and get it, but what upset me more than that was I could have had a picture taken with my best friend, each holding an Emmy in Texas and stuff, and I would have loved that. But I came up with something even better. I said, Robert, let's go back to the old H&B building. Let's take a picture of us standing in front of the dumpster holding the Emmys. That's a great thing.
Cool.
So um, now, what was the rest of the question? I forgot.
How did you feel when you were nominated, and how did you feel when you won? And I asked, what were you nominated, and what did you win an Emmy for?
I won for Samurai Jack. It was an episode of Samurai Jack. When I was nominated, I got so many like nomination certificates, and I guess, and I do have some certificates that were winners, but we didn't get the hardware. We just got the certificate. The producers would get the hardware. I've got several of those. So I didn't think about it when I was nominated. I never thought about it too much. But when I won, I go, boy, doesn't that figure? Doesn't that figure? And I'm not there. I could have been there. But if had I gone to it, I probably would have jinxed it and not won. So, but there's pride. You're proud to do that, and it's nice to be recognized and all that stuff. And you don't get a lot of recognition in this industry unless you're one of the big honchos somewhere. But there's an awful lot of little guys that do a lot of good work that never get recognized. And I think anytime you can recognize somebody, I'm compelled to definitely say yes, recognize them because they deserve it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I have another question. How have computer-generated illustrations affected your profession? Now you're retired, of course, so I didn't realize you're retired until today, but if you were still working, how do you think that computer-generated illustrations have affected your profession and your craft? And how do you feel about CGI, quote-unquote, art that has transformed motion animation, starting with Pixar's first feature, Toy Story, on November 22nd, 1995?
I'm not big on the computer stuff. To me, it's heartless. It's soulless. To me, I would much rather see the old Ray Harryhausen, Seven Voyages Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts.
Stop motion animation. He did his last movie was Clash of the Titans in 1980. Yes, he was well known for Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, stop motion animation, where you go frame by frame and photograph typically a clay figure.
Yes. I'm all for that. One of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie, is King Kong, the original. I mean, you look at that was done in 1933, I think. It's unbelievable what they did. Unbelievable. It's fantastic. I love that stuff. So I don't have much to say about the field. I respect it. I respect the guys that work on it, and I respect the guys that do it. I know it takes a lot of work, a lot of hard energy, and I respect them for doing that stuff. But it's not my cup of tea. And when I retired, I was still doing exposure sheets. I was timing out exposure sheets, and to me, that's a very important step because if you time something wrong, you have to pay for it to be redone. And the studio doesn't want to spend any extra money; they want to spend as little as possible. So you got to be on the ball. You got to know what you're doing. And there've been more people that have been not knowing what they're doing and have screwed things up that it's just a mess. And I tried to tell a lot of these younger kids that were coming in after me. Look at, if you know how to use the computer and you know how to time this stuff using the computer, why don't you let me teach you how to do it the old traditional way? That way, you'll have the best of both worlds, and you can go either way you want, whichever way you want to go. You can do it. You can apply a little bit of both to all of it, and you'll be that much better off. But You know what? Most of them said no. I'm going to do it the computer way. A lot of them think the computer is the saving grace of everything, but I don't think it is. It's a great tool, but I don't think it's the saving grace of everything. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure, but
Well
I
said. No, it very much does, and I concur. As a comic book collector and fan and amateur comic book artist, I feel the same way. I don't feel like comic book art looks authentic. It doesn't look like comic books that Marvel put out and published from, say, 1959 to 1998. I mean, it looks like a CGI drawing to me. I just don't like it as much. That's my opinion.
yeah, I don't like it at all.
um,
What are they going to do? Come over here and kick me in the shin?
well, you're retired now. They can't take your pension away. You got nothing to lose, my friend.
I got nothing to lose. I'm just in here painting.
I want to get serious now. And we've got to talk about the inspirational part of your story
Sure.
and the sad part. Wow, as I mentioned in the introduction, you received some devastating medical diagnosis. Would you describe what that was in that moment?
I'll take you through that. Okay. Okay, so I'm working, and it's 2007, I believe, 2008, and I'm doing a lot of exposure sheets. I'm writing a lot of exposure sheets for everybody, and I start to notice a weakness in my right arm, and I'm thinking, man, this has got to be carpal tunnel syndrome or something. You know, this has got to be it. So I go to the doctor, who's a friend of mine, and he says, you got to go see a neurologist. Okay, so I go to the neurologist, and the neurologist throws a left hook that drops me right to the ground. Lateral Parkinson's disease on my right side, and it destroys my ability to draw, and it destroys me on the spot. On the spot. I crawled out of that doctor's office. I was devastated. I was dead. I was dead. There's no cure for this. There's no cure. There's no. I will tell you, I only know about me. I don't know about anybody else. I only know about me. But I am a proud member of a 12-step group that has kept me clean and sober for 22 years. And I fall back on that. That's my fail-safe line right there. I had a resentment against everybody and everything. And I'm just going to say this. I'm not telling you what to believe or what not to believe, but I believe. I got to a point where I just said I was going to go to Mexico and drink my brains out and shake my brains out because there's no way out of this. Until I had a moment of clarity, and I said, God, I can't do this. I need help, and I need help right now. I cannot do this. I'm not strong enough to do this. I need help. And I'm convinced he revealed to my mind what to do, and that was to be of service to everybody, every way I can, to help somebody. And by the way, you have a left hand. I went to the bookstore, I bought a sketchbook, and for the first time in my life with my left hand, I wrote across the top page drawings from the left. I taught myself to draw right left-handed and saved a career. I didn't do that. A power greater than self did that. And I don't question it any farther than that. I live in acceptance and gratitude. Acceptance and gratitude. Acceptance and gratitude. I accept the fact that I have two vicious diseases, and I'm grateful for anything I can do. Anything. And that's how I live my life. So I went back to the office that day, and I went to my boss, and I said, Howard, I can't write and I can't draw with my right hand, but I'm going to teach myself to do it left-handed. And he looked at me and he said, Tim, I'm not paying you for beautiful calligraphy. I'm paying you for what you know. As long as I can read what you write, you're here. And I looked up and said, thank you, God, first step in the right direction. And I have kept walking forward ever since, and that's been 16 years ago now, roughly. So,
Amen. The higher power. You answered my next question. How do you cope? And you just answered that question very eloquently.
Yeah, that's it. I live in acceptance and gratitude. Now, I fall well short of the mark every day, well short of the mark. But you know what? I get up. I get up. You never, ever, ever give up. Ever. Ever. I get up and I keep moving forward. And I have met more people across this world through these Zoom meetings I go to, and people calling me from hearing about one thing or another about Parkinson's or whatever, and they just I've met more people that are so taken by me. Never in a million years, did I think I'd have anything to say that would mean anything to anybody. I'm a dumbbell cartoonist from Burbank. That's all I ever was. That's all I ever wanted to be. But apparently, I guess I have something to say. And that something to say is you never give up. You never give up.
Well, I gave up, and you're an inspiration to never give up. Actually, we're on the same wavelength because I wrote down, I gave up and you never did. Gave up on my dream of drawing Marvel comic books. I got frustrated because I could draw the face, but perspective always eluded me, and I should have stuck with the classes. I think I would have mastered the technique. I read. This is about you. I mean, I'll just quickly say about me that I read the books like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and I just wish I never gave up. You are an inspiration, and I really truly love that you never gave up. And to teach yourself to draw with your left hand. I was born left-handed. I can't imagine drawing with my right. I can't imagine it reminds me of the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I'm sure.
Yeah, that was a book, yes. I'm convinced that when when the rubber hits the road, we are capable of great things. Great things. Not that I did anything so great, but I believe that the human character is capable of doing great things when you're up against the wall. And I hold on to that. I hold on to that, and I pass on whatever information I can to whoever needs it.
Tim, where can people find your book and your books?
That's a tough one because I have very few. I self-published it. I have very few copies left. I think I have about 100 left. You can you can pass my address on to them, and if they send me a letter or an email, they can send me an email or a text or whatever, and I'll send them a book.
Very cool. Very cool. And thank you for sending us a copy of your book. That was very kind. I have it right here in the background. His latest book, Shaken Not Broken, An Artist's Journey Through Hell. And check out Drawing from the Left. And it might be at a library, but please look at his work. He's so talented and such a nice guy. And by the way, I want to talk briefly about your group, the Cliffhangers. In one of our previous shows, we interviewed, I guess, the leader of the Cliffhangers, Woody Wise. And you guys get together and watch movies, at least pre-COVID. And when we talked offline, you said you're going to resume that hopefully in the very near future as restrictions are lifted and people are vaccinated and whatnot. But you guys get together every couple weeks and you watch classic films. And I think that's pretty cool. And there was a documentary about you and showcased the other members of the Cliffhangers. And it's called Brotherhood of the Popcorn. And we talked about that on Podblast number 54 on Apple, the nostalgic Podblast number 54. It's titled Woody Wise. And then on YouTube, just look up the nostalgic with a C Podblast number 53 on YouTube. And it's titled again Woody Wise and Brotherhood of the Popcorn, and you're featured on there. And I just think it's really cool. And not just professionals in the industry, you had people that had all sorts of different backgrounds and jobs and interests, but your common love was the love of film.
Yes,
And that's your common bond and what brought you all together. I think that's cool.
Oh yeah, and it did bring us all together, and we're all a bunch of movie lovers, and I especially love we love film noir especially, and the old black and white films. I'm a big fan of W.C. Fields and John Barrymore. Woody got this group together about 35 years ago. I was one of the newer members of it. I lived in Lancaster, so I couldn't get down there every weekend for the show. So I came in about 20 years ago, I guess.
You're the baby of the group, or you were, right? Are you still the baby of the group, age-wise?
I'm the baby of the group amongst all these big California land barons, and I'm more screwed up than all of them physically. But not really, I'm just kidding. But it's a great group of guys, and we have a lot of fun. We joke around, and we get over there, and we eat donuts and drink coffee and say words we're not supposed to say at home just because none of the wives are there.
Right.
But we have to be careful because Sandy is there.
Yeah.
She probably reports back to them, so we gotta we're going to be careful there.
No religion or politics discussed, right?
Exactly. That's it. That's it. No religion or politics. That's it. Totally it. Um, but it's a great group of guys. It's just a great group of guys. I love them. Woody usually picks the movies. We never know what we're going to see. We might see a Charlie Chan and part of a chapter of a serial, and then maybe a James Bond movie or something.
Very cool.
It's just great. It's just great. It's a great camaraderie to get together with these guys, and somebody will get a new toy during the week or something, or get a new book or something. They'll bring it and share it with the group, and it's just fun. It's just like being a kid again.
Right on. Tim, let me ask you, we've been doing shows on sex symbols. Who is your favorite movie starlet throughout the years? You mentioned film noir. Do you have a favorite? Is it a Lauren Bacall, or I mean, who is your favorite actress in terms of someone you find attractive and sexy on the big screen throughout all film history? Do you have a favorite?
Boy, I don't know. I like I love Paulette Goddard. She's kind of born out of the blue. I like Hedy Lamarr, Ava Gardner, of course. And there was one who was a great film noir actress. Oh God, she was in the Bogart one where he's the writer and he's so mean to her. Gloria Graham.
Oh, Gloria Graham, right. She was in Outer Limits later in her career in the early 60s, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was one that oh gosh, when she was on the Danny Thomas show, Sherry Jackson.
Oh yeah, the older daughter. Yes, she's so beautiful. She was in.
Wow.
She was in the movie. You're probably aware of this, but they did a Peter Gunn movie overseas, and I think it was released in America. And she was topless in that. And she was in. And Playboy did a spread of images from that movie. Anyway, she's gorgeous, and she's best known to nerds like me as being in a Star Trek episode written by Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, called What Are Little Girls Made Of from the first season. And she played an android alongside Ted Cassidy, who had just finished playing Lurch on The Addams Family. You're right. Anyway, she was definitely gorgeous, Sherry Jackson. And yes, she got her start, I guess, on television as the oldest daughter in the Danny Thomas Show, which was known as Make Room for Daddy in syndication reruns.
Yes. Yeah, she was gorgeous, and there's a lot of great looking ones. There's just something about that whole film noir look that I heard one of the directors comment one time that they thought they had established this whole black and white and shadows and everything, and the guy said, "Hell, we only have enough money for one light." And we put it where we thought it should go, and now everybody thinks it's this great big deal. And it's funny. One of my friends was married to Delmar Dave's daughter, and Delmar Daves did a lot of great film noir stuff. The Bogart one where he escapes from prison and he gets a face change in San Francisco. His wife is in it. I can't remember the film titles anymore to save my life. Somebody will remember it, but Delmar Daves was a great guy. Oh man, and his daughter had great stories.
Excellent. I have a serious question for you, Tim. What are the warning signs of the coming of Parkinson's disease? And do you have any advice for any prevention? Is there anything anyone can do to prevent getting Parkinson's disease? Or is it just genetic, neurological? There's nothing you can do. It's just a matter of genetics. I don't know.
I think it's a matter of genetics. I'm not sure. But what I've got going for me is a great willingness. My doctor tells me that all the time. And workout is huge. I never lifted anything heavier than a 2B, HB, or 4B pencil 8 years ago. But 8 years ago, a good friend of mine who was a good friend of mine, obviously, started going to a gym. He said, "You should come over to this gym because this guy's dad has Parkinson's, one of the trainers." And so I'm hooked up with this guy, and here I am going on 8 years later, twice a week, deadlifting 205 pounds, cardio, balance, coordination, all that stuff, and that's huge. That's huge. And just think positive. I have no time for negative anymore. I don't care about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Amen.
I'm positive. You know what? What can we do today?
Kick drama to the curb, right?
Yes, kick drama to the curb. I don't need it. I don't want it. These people that complain. I'll give you something to complain about. Slip these shoes on for a day and tell me what you think. I've had them on for 16 years.
That's powerful.
So it's all about giving back and helping out and helping the kids. That's what I'm for.
Tim Walker, you're an inspiration, man. I really appreciate your time. And I want to have you back if you'll come back once we have the bells and whistles. I want to do this properly where I can show photos of your art. Still having problems with the software at my partner, Al Hardy's studio, my show partner. So I'm just doing this kind of bare bones. And I apologize because you deserve all the bells and whistles. And I want this to look really, really slick for you. And I want people to Google James Tim Walker and look up on YouTube. You were interviewed by CBS News. There's a really nice over an hour long piece where you were interviewed in studio on camera, and just you have an incredible story to tell. And when they can see it in your eyes, that's when it's so much more powerful. That's why I want to do a Zoom call with you. Somehow figure out a way to get you on camera because, I can just see your sincerity through your eyes on camera in those interviews.
Well, tell your audience if they go to YouTube and go to On Location with James Tim Walker. That's the 1 hour plus interview from Sacramento that the guy did with me. On Location with James Tim Walker, and they'll get it on YouTube.
Excellent, excellent. Is there anything else you want to discuss? I'm going to continue on. I'm going to open up the phone lines if anyone wants to call in and talk with Tim Walker.
Ask questions or whatever. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I'll check Facebook here and see if there's any questions for you or comments. But the phone line is 770-438-1050. Now is your chance to ask Mr. James Tim Walker some questions you might have about his work in his illustrious, see what I did there, illustrious long career in Hollywood.
The check is in the mail.
Yeah. Let me check some comments here. Kim Ponder says, man, that's great. You got a pension for doing something that you love. Getting a pension in itself is an accomplishment these days. Everything's a 401k.
Yeah, exactly.
You're blessed, man.
Absolutely. Oh, man. Let me tell you a quick story. This is a great story. I was working in the studio one day at Warner Brothers, and we had offices in a mall. So I'm down in the mall watching the people, and this guy comes by with his young son, probably 7 or 8 years old, in a heavy-duty wheelchair, electric wheelchair. And it was apparent that this child is not going to get out of this wheelchair unless there's a miracle or something. And the father's devotion to the child was just spectacular and amazing. So I watched him for a minute go into the mall, and then I went back into my office and I started working. About an hour later, this wheelchair and this kid and father come rolling into my office, and I don't know these people. And apparently they had been out to visit somebody at Warner's, and somebody said, go take him down to see Tim. I was kind of the old timer at the studio then, and they bring people in and give tours, and I'd show them how to do stuff. And I mean, this child's whole life was the Justice League of America. Batman, Superman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, all that whole group of characters, right? So I just happened to be working on the cartoon series, the Justice League of America at the time. So I show him artwork and film, and I show him how to draw this stuff, show him pictures and all this. Now, when you're working on shows like that, the studio will give you maquettes, and a maquette is just imagine a statue of Batman or a statue of any one of those characters, about 12 inches tall. And so you can look at him from every angle and see how to draw him, like an upshot, a down shot, over the shoulder, anything like that. So I had 2 boxes of these maquettes that they had given me, and I kept saying to myself, I got to get these to storage. I got to get these out of here. They're cluttering up my office. I got to get these out of here. Well, it became apparent to me that day why I didn't get rid of them yet. I gave the child one of these boxes of the maquettes, and he took them home. I happened to run into the kid's father about 2 months later in a restaurant in Toluca Lake, and we're talking and everything, and he says to me, his son, this is so tough for me to do. His son told him it was the greatest day of his life. How
Oh.
do you get to become somebody's greatest day of their life? How do you get to do that? I don't know. Blessed, a power greater than self. Paid in full forever. Paid in full forever. That's just one of the little blessings I've gotten over the years from all this stuff. So,
You've made a difference in his
yeah.
life and many other lives. You have made a difference. And your artwork will live on forever. Forever.
Well, I hope
It's
so. I
immortal.
hope so.
You're immortal.
Oh, shit. Let's not get too enthusiastic. I'll never come down from this.
Well, I want to invite you back in a couple months or less, and we'll do this again. And I'm just so grateful for your time, man.
Sure. Someone's got a question? I'm
Let's
available. I
see.
got no rush.
Let's see. All right, let's see. See, I see a lot of comments. Let me see if there's a question. Uh-oh. Oh, somebody. This is the audio went out. Now it's back. Okay. Well, geez, that's not good.
Yeah. That's
Let's
not
see.
good.
Oh, here's a comment from Becky Ross Smith. She says, "Oh wow, you're so humble, and I love hearing your stories." That's Becky Ross Smith.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here we go. Wesley Millsap says Bob Clampett, Tex Avery, and Chuck Jones all had shows on every Sunday on Cartoon Network years ago. Yep, yep.
Yep.
And he also says Cartoon Network always did an awesome job promoting the Bob Clampett, Tex Avery, and Chuck Jones shows. Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely.
Becky says thank you, Tim,
You're welcome, Becky.
for sharing your inspirational story.
You know, for all you budding young artists out there, you know, drawing is such a part of my life. Drawing is so spiritually fulfilling. And, you know, I meet a lot of people that say, I can't draw a straight line. And I say, yes, you can. Go over there and get that ruler and come over here and draw a straight line. But I'm not interested in the straight line you draw. I'm interested in the curved, the crooked, the broken. In other words, if you don't do any kind of artwork, get a sketchbook, get some soft pencils, soft lead, and just doodle. Just doodle. Draw a circle, put a little tiny circle almost up at the top of it inside the circle, and then put two little dots over that tiny circle. Now you got a face. In other words, just draw, 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 and enjoy the experience. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. There are no good. A long time ago, I worked with a guy. He ghosted the Pogo Possum comic strip. If you remember that comic strip from the 40s and 50s, you might not. It was a beautiful comic strip. And he used to say to me, Tim, there are no good, bad, or indifferent drawings. They're your drawings. Whatever you want to do is fine. If you just want to make lines on a paper, that's fine. But just enjoy the creative process. It's so fulfilling for the soul. And what's it cost? A few dollars for some paper and some pencils? Sit out in the park and do it. Sit at Starbucks and do it. Sit wherever. And just enjoy the experience. So that's all I'm going to preach on that subject.
Live in the moment. Live in the moment.
That's right. Live right now, one day at a time. Live in the moment. Same thing.
That's right. Serenity prayer, brother. I have a question for you from Kim.
Yeah.
Tom,
Yes.
Tom, do you foresee the younger generations you have taught, quote, the best of both worlds, unquote, teaching their successors? Do you have faith in
Well,
that happening?
I'm sure they will. I don't know what it's going to be. You know, we don't know what everything evolves into something different. So, yeah, I'm sure that they'll continue on and they'll teach the generations coming behind them, and just like I taught some of the guys that came behind me, and I was lucky enough to have some of the great giants teach me. So yes, I think that's just the way it is in every industry. I think, unless I'm wrong, I don't know, but yeah, I would say they will. Sure.
We would hope so, wouldn't we? You know, that you'd
Absolutely.
pay it
Absolutely.
forward, you know? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Give a helping hand up. You know, like people ask me all the time, what do you think of my drawings? What do you think of this, that, and the other thing? Well, I'm not out to crush anybody. Like, there are people that say to me, oh, I want to do it. I want to get into animation. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I look at their stuff and I say to them, you know, if it's meant to be, it will be. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week. It might not be next month. But if it's meant to be, it will be. But for now, draw, and did I say draw? That's what the old timers used to tell me all the time. They'd say, draw, you've got 100,000 bad drawings in you. You've got to get those 100,000 out, and then you start doing good drawings. Well, I guess I finally got the 100,000 one out about 4 days ago. I'm finally starting to do some good ones. So, in other words, drawing. If you don't do it professionally, if it doesn't work out, you still have to have it for yourself to enjoy, and just get that great feeling, that satisfaction of doing what you do, and just the art of doing, not the art of the final product, the art of doing.
Very well said. I have a question for you, Tim.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If there is there one pop song or song that you like that best describes your journey, the journey of James Tim Walker, what would that song be?
I thought about that, and I wasn't quite sure, but I came up with one, and I came up with this one because, number one, I love the acoustic guitar in this song, and it's really a song about life if you really think about it. It's the great 11-minute song by Bob Dylan called Desolation Row. It was on the Highway 66 Revisitors, Highway 61 Revisit, the early album. And it's a typical Dylan. It's got all the ups and downs and the most beautiful acoustic guitar playing that I've ever heard. Now, I will tell you that my favorite song from rock and roll or 50s or 60s or any of that stuff was Silhouettes on the Shade by the Rays. Took a walk past your house late last night, all the shades were pulled and drawn way down tight. Wondered if I was the guy for Silhouettes on the Shade. That's my lousy impression of it. But those are the two songs. I mean, there's any number of them that I've loved. I mean, Sounds of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel. I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan. A lot of that. There's so many of them, but I think Desolation Row is the one I would pick.
Well, man, your dedication to overcoming just unsurmountable odds is very inspiring, and I'm very grateful for you coming on our little show, the Nostalgic Podblast. And we're going to do this up right with some graphics next time. I promise you, sir, in the near future.
That's fine. At your convenience, anytime I'm available.
Excellent. Well, I guess we'll wrap. I'm going to continue my little history lesson of animated feature films in this show.
Let me tell you one last little story that I just happened to remember.
Okay.
I was working on a project called the Joke Book at Hanna-Barbera. And what it was a bunch of little blackout jokes, like little quick 10-second joke, 30-second joke. And it never found its place on the air because it always got preempted by basketball or something. It never found its way on the air. But anyway, you would pick up a storyboard or a script. You'd pick up a script and you had to do the storyboard, the layouts of the animation, and do the whole thing. You'd pick it up from Mr. Hanna. And Mr. Hanna was, Hanna-Barbera, the great timers on. Mr. Barbera did the layouts on Tom and Jerry, but Mr. Hanna timed all the scenes out. He was great at timing. So you had to do this project and go over every step of it on the moviola with Mr. Hanna. And the moviola is where they film the pencil drawings and you look at it to make sure it's right. So I had the monsters playing golf, and it was Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Batman, and the Mummy playing golf. Well, I did this scene. If you remember those old mummy pictures from Universal back in the 40s, this is the slowest monster on Earth, but yet he's killing everybody in sight, right?
Karloff, yeah.
Yeah. And he would step and drag his foot. Do you remember that walk? He would step and drag his foot, step and drag his foot.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the walk. I copied it on The Walking Dead playing a zombie, but go ahead.
Okay. So I did the mummy walks across the golf course, right? So I did this scene where he's walking across the golf course just like that. And Mr. Hanna went berserk. He goes, "Oh my God, that's great. I love that. I can use that. I love that. That's perfect. That's perfect." And I thought to myself, here's the guy who was a hero of mine growing up watching Tom and Jerry. And here I am in his studio doing something that he really liked, really, really liked. Wow, how cool is that? That just made it all worthwhile, everything. So that's just another one of those little gems that happens in life, and that you're lucky enough to realize it's happening. So anyway.
How's your health now?
My health is good. I'm going to Stanford on the 3rd of June to look into this deep brain stimulant operation that they have, which is it sounds very Frankensteinian, but it's not. They drill 2 holes into your brain. There's no feeling in your brain because there's no nervous system. They place 2 electrodes in your brain, hook it up to a battery like a pacemaker, and my nervous system will be what's the word I'm looking for? Will be stimulated through electrically, where yours is stimulated by the brain, by the chemicals your brain manufactures that my brain no longer manufactures. So we're going to look at that on the 3rd. And Stanford has gone wild over my artwork, and they see, like you, they say it's so inspirational they want to do something with it. I don't know what, but hopefully it'll be something positive. So I'm anxiously heading that way, and maybe by the next time I see you or talk to you, I'll have a new battery. I can take the tattoo off of my right arm that says "out of order." I can take that off and put.
Out of order? I didn't even know about that. A tattoo out of order. How about that?
I didn't put that. I kept telling everybody, I'm going to get a tattoo. You know what it's going to be? What? I'm going to put it on my right arm or right shoulder. What's it going to say? Out of order. I thought that was perfect. I thought it was perfect, but I never did. But anyway, that's what's on the horizon, and I'm painting and drawing every day and living life in the now, right here, right now, talking with you.
You're staying creative.
That's it. Never give up, no matter what you got, whether it's mental, physical, whatever.
Yes. Never surrender, like the movie. Remember the comedy with Tim Allen?
Yes.
Never give up, never surrender. But you're doggone serious, man. I mean, you're living it.
I'm serious as can be. I don't
Galaxy Quest.
I'll tell you I did because what the hell? I probably saw it. I just don't remember. But yeah, never give up, man. That's the key.
Yeah.
So hey, it's been great talking to you. And
thank you.
Anytime you want to talk, give me a holler. I'm here for you anytime. And if anybody wants a book, give them my email address and tell them to shoot me a text or something, and I'll send them a book.
You're getting a lot of thumbs up and prayers in the chat here. Becky says prayers with an emoticon of praying hands. Thank you. Thanks for the love, everybody, for Tim. Thank you. Tim Walker, I will call you soon, and I'm honored to have you on our little nostalgic Podblast. Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been a great joy and an honor, and my love to all your listeners, and keep drawing. Everybody, I expect everybody to be drawing by the next time I get on here because I want to see some sketchbooks.
I love it. And to piggyback on what you said, my niece, who's 8, taught me how to draw. I mean, I can't draw anywhere near as well as you. I'm not trained. I don't have the talent, but she taught me how to draw a puppy with a face where you just take a few circles, join them together, and follow her simple directions, and all of a sudden, you've drawn a puppy, the face of a puppy dog.
That's right.
It was the coolest thing. My niece Molly.
Yeah. That's the happy accidents that happen.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get, and boy, they're great. It only costs you pennies. So.
Oh, another question. Did you think about teaching art? Have you thought about going into teaching, or are you just having a better time, more inspirational time doing what you're doing right now?
No, I haven't really thought about teaching. I would just tell people to just keep doing it and do it and do it. Find a style, find your style. You know, just keep doing it. And I don't know if I would be a good teacher or not, but I can inspire them to keep doing it. I think that's for sure.
Oh, we got some requests for your email address. Wesley says, "What's the email address?" And Kim says, "Please address."
Okay, I'm gonna just tell it to you, and you can relay it to them. It's G. I'll spell it. GOBOFSPITAA. That's gobofspitaa@yahoo.com. You got it?
Got it.
gobofspitaa@yahoo.com. And I'll go in to tell you what that means the next time we talk.
Okay, sounds good. And you check that email regularly, sir?
Yeah, I check it regularly. So just tell them to include their address, and I'll send them a book until I run out.
What?
Yeah, I'll send them a book. Well, they might have to send me 50 cents or a quarter.
I think the shipping will be a little more than that, but I'm grateful for the book you sent me, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. And if you put it on eBay, pay somebody $1.50.
I'd never do that, man. No.
I know. I'm just kidding. All right, man. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you. You inspired everyone that was listening today, and this will air next week, just so you know, at fistfulofradio.com. It'll air Saturday and Sunday. This is Georgia time, the Atlanta, Georgia area, from 2 to 5 p.m., and that'll be next weekend, and it'll be on YouTube tonight. So this will have some rewatchability. And thank you again, Tim, my new friend, and I will talk with you soon.
Thanks, Chance. It's been a pleasure. Take care, buddy.
God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you, too. Bye-bye.
Bye. How about that? I hope the audio was okay, guys. I saw some messages in chat from Wesley, particularly, saying that the audio dropped off. Gosh, I hope not, but it may have. I just want to read a little bit of Tim, and then I'll get on with talking about more animated feature films and the history of that. So, let me just give you some more background on Tim. And you heard his email address. I'm going to repeat. I said this at the top of the show, but as many as 1 million Americans and up to 10 million people worldwide are currently living with Parkinson's disease, according to the Parkinson's Disease Foundation. Experts say many thousands of cases go undetected, but every year in America, some 60,000 people are diagnosed with Parkinson's. In 2007, Tim Walker was one of them. For someone who made a living with his hands, the news was devastating. The two-time Emmy winner Walker is a world-renowned animator and animation director, having worked with the Disney Studio, Hanna-Barbera, Filmation, Warner Brothers Animation, and more. His talents have given the likes of such characters as Scrooge McDuck, Tom and Jerry, Sylvester and Tweety, the Flintstones, Batman and Superman, and all the DC superheroes' life. He brought them to life. This is a quote from Tim. Drawing has been one of my passions since the first cartoon I saw at my grandparents' house when I was 5 years old, says Walker, who grew up in Hollywood not far from the Hanna-Barbera studio. A few years later, he became a dumpster diver, Tim, searching for every bit of animation art in the form of cells he could find in the studio's trash so he could practice drawing. It was one of those occasions that Mr. Barbera himself caught Mr. Walker in the dumpster and yelled, "Get out of that dumpster, you knothead!" Quote from Tim. I was 10 years old and I didn't know who he was. Walker laughs. I went on to animate for him years later and worked with him for years. It was probably in 2006 that I started noticing what I perceived was a weakness in my right arm. I thought it was carpal tunnel syndrome, recalls Walker, who lives in Southern California. My general practitioner doctor said I needed to see a neurologist specialist who diagnosed lateral Parkinson's on my right side. I was devastated. I left that doctor's office thinking, how could this have happened to me? Of course, self-pity sits in. It would with me. I suffer from self-pity. I dwell in it, and that's a bad thing. As Tim said, you got to stay positive and throw negativity to the curb. Continuing on with this article, which is from healthylivingmagazines.com. His first instinct was just to load up his vehicle with alcohol and drive to Mexico and drink himself into oblivion. But as a member of a 12-step program, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Walker knew that would be a fatal mistake. Quote, after the diagnosis, I said, God, I can't do this. I cannot live life on life's terms. I'm a proud member of a 12-step group. I've been clean and sober for 17 years. This article's from 2016, so you can add some years to that. I went to the bookstore, bought a sketchbook, and started teaching myself to draw with my left hand. I believe God and the program showed me what to do. If that day didn't take me out, I don't know what would. Now, Walker not only learned how to draw with his left hand, he wrote a book about his experience entitled Drawing from the Left. Then, about 2 years ago, he started feeling symptoms in his left hand, too. Oh, geez. I was at the point where I started shuffling along. You'd have thought I'd had a stroke, he says. My neurologist told me about surgical deep brain stimulation, DBS, for Parkinson's, and I went down to UCLA to be evaluated for this. The doctors there put me on different medication, and the second day that I was on it, I was able to run backward. I went back to UCLA, and they told me the medication is doing what the operation would do, and that I might never need the operation. And I'm doing well now. The disease has progressed a little bit, but I don't shake badly. If you didn't know I had the disease, you would not know it just by looking at me. The day I was diagnosed, I had to come home and tell my girlfriend, Susan, who's now my wife, says Walker, recalling one of his toughest days. Her father was dying of Parkinson's at that time, so I didn't think she could handle it. I looked into those beautiful blue eyes and told her the news. She said she loved me no matter what. The couple married the following year. I don't get down, like down in the dumps. I don't get down too often, but when I do, she picks me up, says the grateful Walker. People say to me all the time, you act like nothing's wrong. How are you getting through this? There's only one answer. A power greater than self is carrying me through life. End of story. I believe in my lifetime I'll see a cure for this disease. I might not get it, but people coming behind me will. I lived my dream career for over 50 years, and now I'm living for today, and I'm happy with that. Walker plans on attending the film festival, which features an animation exhibit, Journey into Imagination, 100 Years of Animation, Art from Around the World. The exhibit runs at the Appleton Museum of Art in affiliation with the festival. Brotherhood of the Popcorn that I mentioned earlier in this show, a nostalgic documentary featuring Walker and the rest of the Cliffhanger group, will also have 2 screenings, and there will be a celebration of Walker and his work at the Appleton on Wednesday, April 6th, 2016. So that was a few years ago, several years ago. Copies of his book, Shaken Not Broken, An Artist's Journey Through Hell, will be available for sale. Thank you so much, Mr. Tim Walker, for being a guest on the Nostalgic Podblast. We will have you back, and I'm going to give you a call in a couple days to follow up on today. So at the start of the show, I was talking about the origin of animated feature films. And let's continue on with that. Just to give you a history lesson, I took some notes. I wrote 24 pages by hand. It took me hours, and my fingers are like sore from doing this. So I got to belt this out before the end of time, our time slot today, which is a 3-hour time slot. So let's see. Backing up, Lol. The first animated film was from 1917, and it was made in Argentina, and it debuted on November 9th, 1917. Now, flash forward to America. Let's just flash forward to America. When I was talking about, I believe, the compilation. Yes, the compilation movie titled Academy Award Preview of Walt Disney Cartoons from May 19th, 1937 is credited as being the first animated feature film. I'm not talking about shorts. We're talking about movie length. But all it was a compilation of short cartoons. So in my opinion, I'm not sure that counts. A lot of people think of Snow White as the first animated movie. But according to my research, history has dictated that Academy Award review of Walt Disney Cartoons is the first animated feature film from May 19th, 1937. Now, Walt Disney lived from December 5th, 1901 to December 15th, 1966. He was a true pioneer. And Walt holds the record for most Academy Award Oscar wins than anyone. To this day, he holds that record. The most Oscar Academy Award wins. He won 22 Oscars from 59 nominations. Walt Disney was born in Chicago, and Walt developed an early interest in drawing, and he took classes and got a job at age 18. And Walt moved to California in the early 1920s, and he set up Disney Brothers Studio with his brother Roy Disney. And Roy lived from June 24th, 1893 to December 20th, 1971. He also was from Chicago. Now, Roy Disney, his brother, was the first CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And Walt developed the character of Mickey Mouse in 1928. That was Walt's first success. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. Pinocchio and Fantasia, which both came out in 1940. Dumbo in 1941. And Bambi in 1942 were his immediate successes. In July 1955, Walt opened Disneyland, the theme park in Anaheim. The Mickey Mouse Club soon followed on television, and Walt was a shy, insecure, self-depreciating private man who was a chain smoker who died, kind of like Rod Serling, the creator and narrator of The Twilight Zone, of lung cancer in December 1966. So don't smoke. Don't smoke. Continuing on with the list of animated movies, The Seven Ravens. That's the title, which in Germany is Die Sieben Raben, was unfortunately a Nazi Germany production. That was a Nazi cartoon, and it was stop motion animation from December 2nd, 1937. And it was directed by, I don't even think I should repeat his name, but I will just for history's sake, Ferdinand and Herman Diehl, Diehl, Dale. And that was The Seven Ravens. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs won a special Academy Award for being the first animated feature. It was released December 21st, 1937 by David Hand, William Cottrell, and Wilfred Jackson, and Larry Morey, Pierce, and Bob Sharpstein. It was a revolutionary movie, and did you know that Walt Disney didn't like it? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was a dark movie, but Walt Disney allegedly didn't care for it. And then let me just tell you about The Golden Key. That was in the Soviet Union, a stop-motion animation and live-action movie from July 1st, 1939 by Mosfilm Productions. This was Alexander Pushko's first and last foray into animation. I'm sorry, it's the last foray into animation. Gulliver's Travels was released December 22nd, 1939 in the United States of America by Fleischer Studios. And they had done the Superman 1940s cartoons in color. Those were shorts that would appear before the feature film. And Dave Fleischer directed. Gulliver's Travels, December 2nd, 1939. Pinocchio was released on February 7th, 1940, and it won 2 Academy Awards. One for Best Original Song for When You Wish Upon a Star. Man, is that not like the quintessential Disney theme tune, When You Wish Upon a Star? Won an Oscar, and it won for Best Original Score. That's a signature song. I love When You Wish Upon a Star. And of course, Pinocchio introduced the character of Jiminy Cricket, who had been in the book, The Adventures of Pinocchio from 1883. And in that, Pinocchio killed Jiminy Cricket. And Jiminy Cricket, his voice always reminded me of Joe Lieberman, the former running mate of Al Gore in the election bid for president in the year 2000. Joe Lieberman, he always reminded me of Jiminy Cricket. But I think Joe Ockman, he was the voice. Let's see, Joe Ockman. No, I'm sorry. Cliff Edwards was the voice of Jiminy Cricket from 1940 to 1971. And the character was created, as I mentioned, by Carlo Collodi, Collodi, in his 1983 children's book. The next Disney blockbuster in the world of animation was Fantasia, the first animated feature and the first to be presented in stereophonic surround sound. And it was a winner of 2 Special Academy Awards, released November 13th, 1940. Revolutionary movie. And it was really the first feature that was animated, where you're talking about just sole animation, and it's a total classic. Then you had Princess Iron Fan. Get this. This was in China. That was the first Chinese animated film. They've never really been terribly original when it comes to pop culture. I mean, this isn't a political statement. It's just a fact. I mean, January 1st, 1941 is when China debuted their first animated feature, Princess Iron Fan. And, they're seldom the innovators and always the imitators, in my opinion. So there's that. That's just historical. It's just a fact. Then you had The Reluctant Dragon, released June 21st, 1941 by Disney. It's traditional and live action. It was a documentary, The Reluctant Dragon. On October 23rd, 1941, Dumbo was released, and Ben Sharpstein directed that. That was another sad one, kind of a real tearjerker of an animated movie. Then Fleischer Studios, which is a competitor of Disney, released Mr. Bug Goes to Town. It was traditional animation, and the last animated feature made in the USA before the Japanese sneak attack of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7th, 1941. This movie was released 2 days before on December 5th, 1941. Mr. Bug Goes to Town. December 5th, 1941. Now, Chile produced their first animated feature film in 1942, and it's lost. Again, is it lost or is it going to surface and someone's going to make $1 billion? I don't know, but as of now, as I record this in the year 2021, it's lost. And I can't even pronounce it. It's called 15,000 Divjos, Dibujos. I don't know if the J is silent or not. 15,000 Dibujos, directed by Jamie Escudero. That was Chile's first animated movie. Getting back to America, what you care about, Bambi, directed by David Hand, was released for Walt Disney Productions on August 9th, 1942. And when I think of that, when I think of the name David Hand, do you remember the movie The Hand starring Michael Caine from the 80s? This is way off topic, but he was a cartoonist, his character, who was driving along in his car, and he had his hand outside the window of his car, and it like strikes like a mailbox or something, and it cuts his hand clean off. It's a horror movie called The Hand. And so Michael Caine's character is terrorized by his hand, his severed hand. And it was just a bizarre horror movie. Anyway, I digress, but I thought of that when I read about the name of this director, David Hand. I took a note of it. Remember that movie, The Hand, starring Michael Caine. All right. Continuing on, August 24th, 1942, there was another package film, which is an anthology film, meaning it's a bunch of short films edited together, composed of several short subjects. It was released by Walt Disney. It's called Saludos Amigos. So that was technically a theatrical feature film, but it was a bunch of shorts, an anthology edited together of short films. This sounds cool. I've never seen this. Victory Through Power, an animated documentary by Disney released during World War II, released July 17th, 1943 by Walt Disney Productions. And I guess that was a war, I guess, propaganda piece, but that's pretty cool. It was, I guess, about victory over the terrible, terrible Axis powers by the Allies. So, Victory Through Power. I'm going to look that up. I'm ashamed to say I've never even seen it. Then you had The Three Caballeros, a package film from December 21st, 1944 by Disney, and that was traditional animation and live action. Now, the first Japanese animated film was Mamatero's Divine Sea Warriors by Mitsuyo Seo. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but So Kiko Doga Kenjiko, traditional style animation. He directed it, and it was traditional style animation, released April 12th, 1945. And of course, in history, the D-Day Normandy landings were on June 6th, 1944. And then on August 6th, 1945, Hiroshima happened, in which the USA nuked Hiroshima, and then Nagasaki a couple years later on August 9th, 1945. And there 129,000 and 226,000 people were killed. And that was the end of World War II, and the only use of a nuclear bomb in war in history, knock on wood, was during the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And again, it killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people. Wow, the power of the atom bomb. Getting a text here. Let's see what this is. Listen, I want to invite listeners to call in with your favorite animated show or the first show you saw in the theater. And the phone number is 770-438-1050. Feel free to interrupt me with my boring history lesson. Let's see here. The Enchanted Sword was released by Spain on November 23rd, 1945, and that was the first Spanish animated feature and the first animated feature film produced in color outside of the USA, The Enchanted Sword. And I mentioned the world's first feature-length color motion picture was The Gulf Between, released September 17th, 1917, a romantic comedy. And it's also a lost film. The movie Handling Ships was the first British animated feature, and it was an instructional film, stop motion animation. Again, we talked about this with Tim. That's where clay figures, you know what it is. Stop motion animation is where clay figures typically are photographed frame by frame to create and simulate motion, like Ray Harryhausen did. So Handling Ships was an instructional film released in 1945 in the United Kingdom. And that was their first animated movie. Stop motion animation counts as animation, whether it's drawn by hand or photographed with a camera of an inanimate object, making it animated. The Lost Letter in 1945 was the first full-length traditional animated film for the USSR. Walt Disney struck again with Make Mine Music on April 20th, 1946. That was another package film, compilation film by Walt Disney Productions, and it was the first animated feature film to be released and made after World War II. And it had traditional animation as well, the hand-drawn animation, Make Mine Music. Song of the South, one of the most controversial in retrospect Disney films of all time, was released November 12th, 1946. And it featured traditional animation and live action. And of course, live action is real actors intermixed with animated characters. I guess for the younger folks, think Space Jam. I mean, I think you get what it is. The audience is an educated bunch, but it's kind of like Space Jam was. And I think Space Jam was a pretty good movie. We'll get to it later. I'm going to stop at the year 2000, by the way. I'm not just going to have Motor Mouth going through this list, but, I think once the digital and Pixar took over, you still had some hand-drawn animated movies, but really, it shifted towards movies like The Incredibles and Cars and the Lego Movie and things like that. And I want to focus on the hand-drawn and the stop-motion animation today. So there is a stopping point. But Song of the South, yeah, that's the only Disney movie I can think of that's not on Disney Plus. It's been withheld for obvious reasons. I think it's been mischaracterized as a racist movie, and it really wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. Uncle Remus was a wonderful character, and it's a movie that I grew up with. I'm from Generation X. I don't see any problem with it. Of course, I wasn't born with color, obviously, so I don't have that perspective, but for some reason, it's been demonized over the years, and I think unjustly so. I have a copy of it from 16mm film, Song of the South, and a member of the Nostalgic Podblast, Al Hardy, a founding member along with me, he's got several movie posters, and he sells them occasionally on eBay in his eBay store that Al Hardy has. Can't remember the name of his eBay store, but he'll tell you next time he's on the Podblast. Song of the South. It should be on Disney Plus. I mean, they could have a disclaimer like they have, my goodness, for The Muppet Show, right? Where they have a disclaimer, this was made in different times. Why not put that disclosure before Song of the South? Kate Johnson says, hey. Wesley Millsap says, the first animated movie I saw in a movie theater was Disney's Beauty and the Beast, 1991. Wesley, I'm about to mention that coming up. That is a heartwarming, great animated film and a major success for the Walt Disney Company. Man, they could crank them out. And Kim Ponder agrees. Yeah, just the title alone, Victory Over Power. Amen, sister. And she says, boy, you couldn't get away with that now. I guess she means victory over power. I know. That's what I'm saying. The Walt Disney Company has changed over the years. I'm not going to knock them. It's just a different company than what Roy and Walt envisioned when they started it back in the day. So Song of the South, that's really a classic and one that's been unjustly demonized, and it's a shame. The Tinderbox was released May 16th, 1946. That was the first Danish animated feature, and it was traditional hand-drawn animation. Listen to this title, The Crab with the Golden Claws, released January 11th, 1947, and it was the first Belgian animated feature, and it was stop-motion animation. And Claude Maisonnet directed that. If you want to call in, people are texting me. The number is 770-438-1050. Feel free to call in. That's 770-438-1050, or just comment on the Facebook page. And if you're listening at fistfulofradio.com, it's a week after I was live, but you can join the conversation on YouTube at the Nostalgic Podblast YouTube channel or the Nostalgic Podblast Facebook group. On September 27th, 1947, Fun and Fancy Free was released, and it was traditional hand-drawn animation and live action. And it was by Jack Kinney and Bill Roberts, who both directed the animation, with Hamilton Lusk directing the actors. I'm sorry, William Morgan directed the actors. The Nostalgic Podblast.
Hi, is that Chance?
Yes, it is. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with?